Hello everyone, a very good evening to all of you. I am Bhavti Doshi, Marketing and Branding Head with Minimax Systems Private Limited. Hope you guys have been safe and sound. We met approximately a month back where we discussed about lubrication management and lubrication reliability. Today is an open forum where we'll be discussing live questions and answering you guys with the expertise of the panel members that we have with us today. Make sure that you drop in your question in the Q&A box for us to answer and not in the chat box. We would miss out the questions asked on the chat box. The flow of the webinar would be where we will be having a presentation first, which will be a snapshot of all the past webinars, just touching upon the main topics, and then we will open the forum for Q&A. So let me give you an introduction about who's on the panel today. We have Mr. Anshuman Agrawal, the founder and managing director for Minimax Systems. Anshuman is an IIT ISM gold medalist in mechanical engineering. He leads Minimax Systems with a passion for technopreneurship and impacting the lubrication industry. He's also a certified MLT 1 from ICML and a trained MLE from Noria Corporation USA. His 14+ years of experience spans various technology solutions, expanding Minimax reach beyond India to cater to the international market. He has authored many articles and is a frequent speaker at many industry events, nationally and internationally. His dedication, hard work, determination, sound technical skills, and leadership qualities offer our clients and Minimax team members with unique advantages. Welcome, Anshuman, on the platform.
Thank you so much, Bhavti, for that generous introduction of mine. Thank you so much.
The second panelist is Mr. Yogesh Kumar. Yogesh Kumar has over 11 years of experience in streamlining operations and maintenance, commissioning within the thermal plants. He's also an expert in implementing techniques and take measures to reduce the O&M expenditure. By qualification, he is a BE mechanical engineer with a PG diploma in thermal power plants, a certified boiler operation engineer, and an MLA 2 from ICML. Welcome, Mr. Yogesh.
Thank you, Bhavti.
The third panelist we have today with us is for the very first time coming on this platform. We have Ms. Pulkita Rohila Zaidu. She is associated with Minimax as a business consultant, and she heads the sales and business development department. She's a petroleum engineer and holds an MBA from IIM Indore. She has an experience of working with top oil and gas companies, EPC companies, and also she has been providing her expertise into sales, project management to many PSU handling units, customer lifetime value enhancement, and vendor management services to many sectors. So let us start the webinar today, and I'll keep you guys posted as and when we flow towards the Q&A section. Over to you, Anshuman, for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bhavti. So I would like to bring about a recap of all the 4 webinars which our team has presented so far. Bhavti, you could just confirm if my screen is visible, the shared screen?
Yeah.
Yes, Anshuman.
Thank you so much. So we have been talking on various topics which are related to equipment reliability, majorly into the lubrication reliability. And in our opinion, the reliability-centered lubrication, which is the call of the day, it's one of the most important phenomena and one of the most important and major activity which any manufacturing plant must take up. Industrial lubricants are now no more considered as consumable, but lubes or industrial lubricants are now considered as long life assets. And in order to have a better life, a better reliability, and as less as possible of breakdown related to lubrication, we must understand the various concepts of reliability which circle around the lubrication. So with regards to a normal equipment reliability topic, you must have come across oil quality measurements, shaft vibration analysis, or monitoring, the casing vibrations, general bearing condition monitoring, and the bearing condition monitoring. So these are the normal topics which we had discussed in our previous webinar. The challenges with regards to the lubricants, there are some of the challenges which we have laid down out here, like high temperature fluctuations happening in your lubrication systems, high speed with regards to the components or machine parts where lubrication oil is going. For example, I can think about a gearbox where the rotation is happening at a certain RPM. I can think of general bearing of a turbine where there is a certain RPM with regards to the turbine rotor. Coming to the next property of or challenge of lubricant is high moisture contamination. Now, moisture or water or humidity in the lubricant is a very damaging foreign impurity, and it must be handled very well. Another challenge of a lubricant, or you can say a very important criterion for deciding the selection of lubrication, is heavy loads. So you need to take care of that as well. Entrained air, which means a lot of bubble formation happens because of the turbulence and other sources where the air or oxygen inbuilt into air gets into your lubricant system. Even that is a challenge. Heating of various components because of the lubricant or because of friction or because of many other reasons. So heat as such is a major criteria. We use a lot of cooling systems around our lubricant systems for maintaining the temperatures. Physical and chemical changes. With this, we want to say any foreign impurities getting added into your lubricant, and they're making certain changes, they're having some reactions in the lubricant. Even those are very important. Now, let us summarize what are the functions of oil or industrial liquids or fluids. So these are some 9 different functions which we have laid down, and these are to provide lubrication, a uniform lubrication around your making surfaces of various machined components. Then to prevent the rust formation, like I have some examples of rust preventive oil, which are used for the steel merchant products or finished goods of steel. And while they go into the merchandise, there is a rust preventive oil which has to be applied on the steel goods. Then to improve the oil degradation solubility, wherein any products with regards to oil degradation, if they are formed, they must get solubilized into the fluid itself so that they don't have much of harmful effect in your oil. For that, a lot of lubricant companies, they use additives to reduce the hydrolysis effect. Because of the water in a lubricant, there might be certain degradation activities happening. So in order to have those minimized, you have certain additives in the lube oil to minimize acid attack on the copper parts and other alloy parts, and to improve the filtration efficiency of a lubricant. There are certain additives which are added into the lubricant, and there are few others like to improve the lubricity, to minimize oxidation, to reduce the formation of foreign sludge or varnish. Now, taking up a different topic on system purity or a complete purification or complete cleanliness of your entire lubrication system. So for this activity or for this pursuit, there is a phenomenon or technology called flushing. So what is flushing? Flushing is using a very high flow or high velocity of a low viscosity fluid, which is passed through the pipeline to components and cavities of your system or the lubrication system. In order to have a successful oil flushing, there are certain cornerstones which we have summarized in our previous webinar. The first one is the correct decision of a flushing flow rate. So while you are deciding on good flushing for your system, you must decide first on what flow rate you must adopt. There are certain calculations for deciding the flow rate, where the important criteria is to have turbulence in your system. In order to have a turbulence, you need to have Reynolds number more than 4,000. Second important feature under flushing is the fluid viscosity. So the fluid viscosity must be as low as possible so that you can achieve a better turbulence even at a lower flow rate. So with a low fluid viscosity, you would be able to achieve a better turbulence or a better Reynolds number, and that's quite demonstrated in the formula given out here. The lower the viscosity, the higher the Reynolds number, the higher the velocity, the higher the Reynolds number. So thereby we can relate the properties of flushing system or flushing mechanism with this formula of Reynolds number. So all we need to keep in mind is the Reynolds number must go as high as possible. And in order to do that, we need to see and check what factors are affecting it. The third important factor is oil temperature. Oil temperature not just reduces the viscosity of the fluid, which is used for flushing, but oil temperature is also used for having thermal shocks. Thermal shocks means variation in temperature. So you can achieve variation in temperature, and thereby you can achieve better flushing action inside your pipelines. Because when the temperature variations happen, there is a certain loosening effect of the debris which is deposited on the internal walls. In flushing, filtration is a very important factor, and thereby you need to have the right selection of flushing. You need to have efficient filtration system. If it is inbuilt to the flushing system, it would add to the advantage. And the last but not the least, fluid testing. Without testing, you can't conclude your flushing activity, and hence you need to have the best of testing methodology at the site itself. Coming to a different topic of contamination in phosphate esters. Phosphate esters, or we normally call it fire-resistant fluids, these are used for the application of turbines. And in turbines, there are governing systems. These governing systems or control systems have electro-hydraulic controls. And these electro-hydraulic controls are governed, or they are managed by special valves. These are servo valves. And these servo valves have a very important role of this fluid, that is phosphate ester fluid or fire-resistant fluid, or you can easily call it EH oil or EH fluid. So they form a very important role in the productivity of, or the run time of this EH system. The kind of contaminations which hamper the objectivity of these fluids is water contamination, moisture, which is very harmful. Water can enter through the tank header space. It can enter through the leakages. Then there is acid formation. Acid formation happens because of degradation of these phosphate ester fluids. Lowering of resistivity. So resistivity is a very important parameter when it comes to phosphate esters, because phosphate esters or fire-resistant fluids, they go into the EH valves, and inside the EH valves, if there's a lowering of resistivity of these fire-resistant fluids, there would be an issue with the functioning of these servo valves or EH valves. Solid contamination or mechanical impurities, they form a very, very damaging foreign impurity in EH oil. Normally, it is recommended to maintain NAS5 or ISO 1512 in these fluids, as per the recommendation of various OEMs and various oil suppliers. Aeration or foaming, these are kind of byproducts of having air contamination in the system, and also degradation products. Oxidation degradation. So oxidation degradation is again a byproduct of having moisture contamination and solid particle contamination, metallic foreign impurities in the fluid. Oxidation degradation is a very, very damaging scenario for your fluid, and it must be avoided as much as possible. Because of degradation, you would experience formation of sludge. So what is sludge? Sludge is a very sticky substance which is deposited at the base of your tank. It is deposited inside the walls. So if you have problems of wall hunting in your system, or if you have problems of a black surface developing on the base of your tank, or if you have experienced certain shining surfaces on the internals of your bearings or other machine components, this is all what we are assuming is sludge. And sludge is something which would lead to a very thick, irremovable surface, a shining surface formed on the surfaces of your equipment, and that is what is varnish. So oxidation is a very damaging phenomenon for your fluids. We must try to have a solution for reducing any possibilities of oxidation in your fluid. Coming to a very important contamination, that is moisture contamination in the fluid. So moisture is existent in your fluid in three forms. So these three forms are basically dissolved form of moisture, and you have a free form of moisture and the emulsified form of moisture. So the dissolved form of moisture is where the moisture contamination or the particles or molecules of moisture get completely soluble inside your oil. Free water is where the moisture particles are not dissolved inside the fluid. So as water has got a higher density than the liquid oil, in most of the cases, water will go down, settle by gravity, and you will find the water at the base of your tank or reservoir. But when your reservoir would be in turbulence condition, then this water would be mixed up with your entire fluid. And this free water might be a reason for a lot of cavitation related problems. When the dissolved content of moisture increases to such a limit that the saturation point beyond which your oil can't dissolve any more moisture, that's called emulsification. So the center image in the screen, that's the emulsification state where the dissolved content of water, it has reached to a level beyond which it can't further dissolve. So in such conditions, in emulsified conditions, you must either dehydrate your fluid by using certain devices and equipment, or you might be in a situation to remove it completely and replace it. What are the effects of contamination? So we might have seen a lot of presentations earlier. Contaminations have multiple effects on your lubricant and the system. So they are the main reasons of oxidation, acid formation, aeration in your system, and cavitation in pumps. There would be experience of sludge formation on various components. Scuffing action would lead to certain damages to your machine surfaces. Corrosion because of acid formation would also be seen, and an irremovable surface of varnish would be deposited at various surfaces, and varnish would lead to creation of hot spots in your equipment. There would be sudden temperature rise of surfaces. You might experience certain thermal or vibration related failures in your systems. Now, we have also talked about the best practices on the topic of lubrication handling. So here are certain pictures which we are just trying to remind you to avoid. So if we are having such kind of situations in our plant, we have a solution for you guys. We would be talking about that. Now, there are certain moisture removal techniques as we talked about moisture contamination. So there are some 4 or 5 major techniques which we know of. And these are gravity separation, a little slow process, where you allow the water to settle down. Second is a centrifugal separation process, where you rotate the entire fluid and water mixture through a centrifuge. water being a higher density fluid will come out of the centrifuge in a separate line. There is a technique called coalescer separation. So coalescers are elements which allow two different densities of fluids to separate while they pass through the coalescer. So this is also a very common technique when it comes to removal of free water from your fluids. Very popular for the turbines, gas turbines or steam turbines. Another technique is absorbent separation. In absorbent separation, there are certain elements which are hydrophilic in nature, and they would absorb the moisture content from your fluid. And the final one is vacuum dehydration or vacuum separation, where you pass the mixed fluid or contaminated oil through a system which has a vacuum chamber, and that vacuum chamber would enable the evaporation or dehydration of water from the fluid volume into the chamber of vacuum. What are the benefits of reconditioning your fluid? So it has certain environmental benefits as well as certain financial benefits for your plant and machinery. You can extend your oil life, have a better reliability for your machine. You can certainly reduce the environmental contamination because you can avoid a lot of waste disposal of the fluids. You would be saving cost on oil replacements. A lot of time and efforts are saved because you would be saving a lot of downtime for your plant. Now here we have a program called RILA. The acronym RILA stands for Reliability Improvements with Lubrication Assessment. So under this program, we can assess the entire condition of your plant with regards to lubrication management. And under this program, the approach which is adopted is listed down out here. And there would be reports which would be generated, specialized for your plant. There would be certain implementation suggestions which would be given, like you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. So let's together begin this journey of having a better reliability-centered maintenance for our plant. And that's why it's important for us to know which are the verticals under reliability-centered lubrication. The first is reception of a new lube. Second is storage and handling of the lube. The third is sampling and oil analysis. The fourth one is reconditioning of our lubes. And of course, improve our intentions towards lubrication reliability. And with this, I certainly start this momentum for you all to start the question and answer session. Your questions are most welcome. We, with our level of experience and our knowledge, would like to give maximum inputs to you. Apart from that, if you have anything else to add to it, please feel free to write to us. Our team is available on our email ID, info@minimac.in. And please do visit our website. It's www.minimac.systems.com. And the website, please do visit regularly because we keep on adding a lot of sections. There is a blog page on the website where we do a lot of case studies, blogs, articles, and there are a lot of other knowledge center related activities going on. And you would be certainly highly updated with regards to our posts if you can subscribe to our blog page. So please go ahead and do that. Thank you very much, Bhavti, for giving me this opportunity to recap so far what we have done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anshuman. That was a great presentation. I hope it has benefited a lot of them because we have some repeat visitors and regular attendees of the webinar as well as some new ones. All right, so let us begin the question and answer now. And I would request the panelists to be active on audio and video. The first question is from Mr. Jigar, and this is for Anshuman. With filtration, ELC centrifuge, we also lose additives. How to measure and take any prevention action?
Thank you so much, Mr. Jigar. This is a nice question, and a lot of lubrication engineers do get this understanding of additive separation. So there is a myth in the entire industry with regards to additive separation. Let me clear that out. So nowadays, most of the additives, around 95% of the additives are not solid additives. Earlier, there used to be a lot of solid additives.
Lubrication of heavy gearboxes and heavy gears. Nowadays, most of the hydraulic systems, bearing lubrication systems, and other lubrication systems like turbines or compressors, the additives are in the submicronic range. Submicronic means they are much lesser than 1 micron. And most of these separation techniques like electrostatic or centrifugal or regular mechanical filtration technique, most of these techniques handle your fluid somewhere around 1 micron. Frankly speaking, a lot of manufacturers might be claiming that the efficiency of the separation system is less than 1 micron, but it has been tested very well that most of the separation techniques talk about contamination removal above 1 micron. A major reason to it is anything less than 1 micron, it's not measurable by the measuring techniques which are common in the market. The measuring techniques are laser particle counters, patch testing kits, and some other devices like pore brokerage technology. Now, all these measurement techniques or instruments or equipment, whatever you call them, they all measure particles above 1 micron. So there are certainly certain myths in the market that a lot of separation products might be separating the foreign impurities or solid impurities less than 1 micron, but that's not a proven fact. So thereby you have your answer. Additives fall in the submicronic range, that is less than a micron. Filtration or separation happens in above 1 micron range. So thereby there is a complete difference of removal and additive sizes. So with this, you can be rest assured, additives are not getting separated in any of the conditions. This has been tried and tested by a lot of lubricant suppliers also. Like 2 decades ago, when I started with this field, I could sense that a lot of people have their own prejudice of not going for any filtration or separation technique. But in present perspective, even the lubricant companies are promoting to go for separation techniques. So thereby, no problem with additives. You can go ahead with separation with any of the techniques.
Okay, thank you so much. We have Mr. Carlos, who is very active and he has some many messages out here. So this question goes to Yogesh. Carlos is a manufacturer, his doubt is regarding the use of this particle and hydraulic oils for wind turbine due to ISO 4406. The particles are gray and have size of 100-200 nano. How do you see the use of IFWS2, the tungsten bisulfide nano, if I pronounce that right, on hydraulic oil once it is dark gray and it is solid lubrication with 100-200 nanometers size?
Very good question. When we talk about the particle size in nano, first thing is that how we measure the particles beyond micron level. If we talk about the nano, it is 10 to the power minus 6 mm, and it's very, very small size. So there is no direct impact on the hydraulic oil because of nanoparticles. And regarding wind turbine hydraulic system, yes, we have our ELC machines which work up to 1 micron particle size, and those can be used. But as we can see in your question, while talking about the nano particles, that there are no direct solution available for that.
Okay, thank you, Yogesh. The next one we have is from Mr. Praful Paranshuman. Why foaming occurs in oil circulation system?
I think the best person to answer this would be Mr. Yogesh, who has handled a lot of related problems
Yes,
in it.
sir. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you, Anshumanji. Yeah, sure. There are a number of reasons for the foaming in oil, and the first one is moisture in the oil. Second is localized circulation of the oil within the pump. That happens when your NPSH is not sufficient as per pump design. Third point is entrapped air, where the air gets into the oil in the return oil pipelines, where we maintain micro-negative pressure. If there is some gap between the parting plane of bearing housing or return line pipe joints, from that gap, air enters into the return oil, and this is very vulnerable that air ingress is happening in the oil. Another reason is depletion of anti-foaming agents. These anti-foaming agents are of solid type, and just because lack of awareness, we go for over-filtration. And what is over-filtration, that we will discuss someday in next webinars. But never abuse the oil with over-filtration. So it may harm the solid additives and ultimately result into foaming.
Okay, thank you. We have Mr. Oedepo from Nigeria requesting to lower the pace. We are too fast. I'm so sorry for the same. You'll get the webinar recording to refer whenever you would want to in future. We have already covered the PPT. Since it was just a recap of the past webinars, we just touched upon it a little faster than normal. The next question we have is from Mr. Gopi. What size of contamination particle is most damaging particle in lubrication system? Anshuman, you would want to answer this?
Thank you. So this is a nice question on which particle size exactly hampers your lubrication system. Now, there's a straightforward textbook answer to it. It depends on the tolerance size of various mating surfaces of your system. So if you have a turbine lubrication system where you have a journal bearing surface, so the tolerance size based on that system is the threshold value under which you must not allow your particles. Now, in most of the lubrication systems, it has been seen and observed that particle sizes from 5 micron down to 100 micron are tremendously damaging. And that's the reason why there is a classification code for such sizes of particles. And the classification codes which we have in our practice, they are 2 in number, which are most common. Like one is NAS 1638, the another one is ISO 4406. These are standards which have been formed for various equipment so that you can follow certain standards based on your OEM of that lubrication system. So if you are having a lubrication system, it's rather very important for you to understand what is required for your lubrication system as per your OEM. And if in case you don't have the OEM manual with you right now for your equipment, maybe because they have been very old, so you can always get back to us. We have in our archives and library multiple records of what are the OEM recommendations for multiple lubrication systems. So for example, if you have a turbine of General Electric of a certain frame or a certain capacity, you could always get back to us on our email, and we would certainly assist you with the recommended NAS class or recommended ISO class, which would take care of all the micron ratings, whether it's 5 micron or it's 100 micron, it would take care of all of them.
Thank you so much. The next question is for Pulkita. Someone wants to know, who's an anonymous person, about the services in oil purification that Minimac has to offer.
So thank you, Bhavti, for the question. Well, it depends on what kind of contamination problem you're dealing with. We have an array of solutions. If you are dealing with something which is related to solid contamination, we offer an array of filters as well as mechanical filtration units. Apart from that, if there are issues related to water, all sort of water contamination, which includes dissolved, emulsified, or free water at whichever stage you are, we have solution for each stage, ranging from vacuum dehydration machines to coalescer systems, which we have recently developed, and it's one of the best offerings that we have to deal with free water contamination. So it really depends on what sort of contamination you're dealing with. So you can send us the oil testing reports that you have, and we'll be certainly able to help you with the filtration solutions.
Thank you for the answer. Mr. Sahu wants to know, this is related to turbine again, the next two questions. So I'll request Mr. Yogesh to answer. Is there any relation between oil quality and turbine vibration? If, what are those oil parameters to look or check for? That's the first question.
Yeah, and this is a common misconception among the turbine maintenance team, that oil and vibration are not interrelated. They are directly related. Oil condition is not only oil contamination, but it is also oil temperature. So first, we would like to address the contamination side. Any contamination in the oil will make pitting on the journals, and pitting and scoring on the journal leads to oil whirl effect, which leads to again vibration of 0.32 to 0.48 hertz, the kilohertz. And this oil whirl can cause severe vibration in the machine even beyond the tripping limits. First was solid contaminants. The second point is moisture in the oil. Any moisture above 300 ppm is directly going to increase the vibration of turbine, because the small or tiny water particles, when it enters in the high pressure zone of the bearing, or we call it load zone of the bearing, it bursts, and the pressure of burst is more than 5000 psi. So this small burst of 5000 psi is just like crackers, and this increases the shaft vibration and ultimately reflects as casing vibration. Then poor oil quality causes churning inside the bearing, which leads to oil temperature increment, and the increased oil temperature will reduce the viscosity of the oil immediately. And whatever the oil grade we have selected was for the normal operation, not for this adverse condition. So oil film will break, and there will be direct metal to metal contact between babbitt and journal, and it will increase the vibration, and it will eat away the bearing base babbitt as well.
I'm sure Mr. Sahu is satisfied with this answer. He still has the next question. Sorry, he still has the next question. You can avoid it if you have already answered that. They have been facing varnish formation and deposits in turbine shaft and bearing, black and reddish color, without any increasing in the tan value, which is the tan value is less than 0.2, but RPVOT values are very less, that is less than 100. What could be the reasons?
So,
yeah, Yogesh or Anshuman?
Yeah, so of course, varnish formation is something which is very common for the turbines nowadays, especially when it comes to gas turbines. Of course, it's very common with the steam turbines as well. I'm so glad that this question has been raised out here on this forum, because varnish is a very new concept, and there needs to be a detailed discussion and a conference on varnish. So I would recommend the webinar team to organize a presentation on varnish formation for various rotary equipment very soon, because this would call for a very detailed answer. But in short, what I can tell you, Mr. Prashant, that varnish is certainly a byproduct or an end product of degradation of your oil. And degradation is not a sudden process, it's a gradual process. Degradation can happen because of 3 to 4 different phenomena. It can be because of moisture contamination in your fluid. It can be because of metal contamination in your fluid. It can be also because of various other acid formations happening in your fluid, which can accelerate the sludge formation through the degradation activity. Now, when you are measuring certain property or parameters like TAN value or RPBOT value, so for example, if you are measuring the ppm levels of moisture, now what happens? You are measuring it right now, but the damage what it has to do, it has already done. The moisture or water contamination has already done the chemical reaction. It has got consumed, and hence, if you are monitoring it right now, it has done the damage, it has got consumed, it has already sacrificed itself. So now you won't find any increment of moisture contamination or acid number in your fluid. But when it was doing the job or the damage job, at that moment, if you might have checked the contamination, or before that, if you might have checked the contamination, you might have seen a certain surge in the contamination level. So we have seen this, a very common thing in the industry, that people come up with certain problems with regards to varnish, with regards to acid numbers. And when they complain that all the other parameters are totally intact, my solid contamination is intact. So we have just one answer, that the contamination, it sacrifices itself in order to damage your oil much in a big way. So thereby, these are the basic primary parameters like solid contamination or water or tank. So these primary parameters would get deteriorated, or they would get changed, or they would get improved once your damage has happened. So you might need a ruler test kind of a thing for checking your varnish formation. Of course, as I have requested, I'm sure Bhakti would come up with a topic on varnish very soon, maybe in the month of July. So if we can do that, we can throw much more better light on this topic of varnish.
Definitely, we'll take up that topic. very soon.
Anshumanji, just I would like to add something, that as you mentioned, nowadays this warning issue is coming very frequently. With the development of turbine, now we are reaching at the higher temperatures, higher operating temperatures day by day. So oil is getting thermal shock as much than the previous times. So especially in the case of gas turbines, we are crossed almost 1150 degrees Celsius. So this high temperature of the rotor, when oil comes in contact with the rotor, immediately varnish formation comes into picture.
Great to know that expert piece of advice from you, sir.
All right, the next one is from Mr. Sharma, and it is on oil flushing. So our expert Anshuman will take care of it. We are going to start oil flushing for ongoing project in CPP. How do I know the correct LPM and temperature for oil flushing to be carried out in ISO VG 46 grade oil? Whether to start with single AOP or both, since these points are not mentioned in the SOP.
So during my recap of the presentation, I mentioned about 5 cornerstones of oil flushing. If you have checked out, maybe this particular question was asked before that. So thereby you can decide your oil flushing activity based on it. And if you are really wanting to have some help, I think my colleague Pulkita throw some light on what kind of services Minimac team can offer you.
So thank you, Anshuman. We have all sorts of services that a lubrication system requires in ensuring that there is absolutely no contamination and the lubrication system is intact. So the services, they range from manpower support if you want to learn about what kind of contamination is creating symptomatic effect in your machines, which is our online consultation that one can avail. The second service that we provide around this is field visit, wherein a person actually goes, collects the sample, tests it, and gives out a report that to confirm that this is the sort of problem. The third one is we send our machines onto the location to solve those problems. And the fourth portion is to ensure that the problems that we have resolved do not reoccur. So we target the root cause around that problem. So this entire life cycle that happens in a lubrication system, we provide services around all of those.
So with regards to the flushing requirement of your captive power plant, if you feel there is certain requirement of services with regards to flushing, then yes, I think Pulkita can help you with that.
Sure. So anyone who requires issues or is facing issues regarding or around flushing in their lines or want those kind of services, they can always reach out to us through several social media that we're active on, LinkedIn, or you can directly email us and we'll be happy to help.
All right, thank you, both of you. The next one is from Birungi E1, and he's requesting to know the best way to use and reuse the oil as he keeps on purchasing new oil on monthly basis.
Yeah, this is a problem actually with a lot of industries around. And I must say that you don't have to replace your fluid anymore, because industrial fluids are not to be changed, rather they can be reclaimed. I would not use the word reuse, but I would use the word extend its usable life. So there is a difference in the phrases. Thereby, if you can use certain technology or techniques to separate the foreign contamination from your oil, you would ultimately obtain is what? You would obtain an extended life of your lubricant. So you don't have to replace the oil from your reservoir. You can use these techniques directly onto your system. So these techniques would help you in removing all the contaminants. If you have water contaminant, it can be removed by one technique. If you have a solid contaminant, it can be removed by another technique. So if you keep on doing that, you would reach a position where you would realize that your oil life is apparently indefinite. It's quite a bold statement that normally lubricant life is indefinite, but there is a rider to it. You must keep your lube clean and cool. So if you can achieve that cleanliness, if you can achieve that operation condition, then certainly you can achieve an indefinite life for your lubes.
So Anshuman, I would like to pitch in here to extend this answer a bit. That sometimes what we have seen is the issue is not really, upkeeping the new oil that they're adding, but it is actually people sometimes they ignore the problem that already exists in the system. So if I would urge everyone who is facing this sort of an issue is to do a 5 why sort of analysis wherein they analyze their storage practices. Sometimes the new oil that is purchased is stored in a very bad environment wherein the impurities start getting added before the oil actually goes into the machine. The second problem could be that there is already impurities sitting in the entire system, and without flushing it, we are just topping up the new oil, which dilutes the impurities temporarily, but then in the long run, it leads to a lot of problem. So I think if we look at these two aspects, which are more of a behavioral aspect when it comes to the maintenance team, I think this problem can be arrested. So that's my take on this issue.
Right.
All right. The next one is for turbine, and I'm going to merge, I think it is for turbine, gearboxes, sorry, and I'm going to merge two questions. First is, what is the recommended NAS value for turbine lubrication? And second is, how much beneficial is it using the desiccant breeders as compared to the traditional breeders on gearboxes?
Both the questions are very good.
Yeah.
The recommended value of NAS for the lubrication system you use for turbine is normally OEM based recommendation. But apart from the OEM, if you ask the lubrication expert, then answer will be NAS 6 or better is always good. Up to NAS 7 you can run with some compromise. And coming to gearbox, using desiccant type of breather will help you out to prevent moisture ingress in the gearboxes, but it will promote the dust ingress in the gearbox. And if you use traditional breather, it will help you to stop the dust ingress, but it will allow the moisture. So best way to find a H2O get like breather which prevent moisture and dust both, or use the desiccant breather in series with traditional breather.
Okay, thank you so much. The next one is Mr. Yadav wants to know that they're facing an issue of regular non-magnetic particle impurities in their wagon tippler hydraulic oil. What can be the probable causes for this?
Okay, shall I answer?
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Yeah. Normally, when we talk about non-metal particles, whatever we came across our experience or maintenance practices, that poor quality of filter selection is the topmost culprit, because the filter media or fugitive filtration media, what we find as non-metallic contaminants. The second point is the coal particles in ingressing through breathers, but it has a very less contribution compared to filter elements. And point will be maintenance practices. While we are doing maintenance practices of the hydraulic system of wagon tippler, especially in the coal handling area, we use jute, not the marking cloth. The jute lints remains in the tank or in the pipeline, which further comes out in the test as non-ferrous contaminants.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Praveen Kumar wants to know, is there any technique to clean synthetic oil? Yes, sir, there is, and we have already covered the webinar on the same. I'll be sharing the link and FAQ with you separately. Anshuman, do you want to throw some light on synthetic oil cleaner?
Yeah, of course. So synthetic oils, they are really very interesting topic, and synthetic oils are nowadays used for most of the applications around us. The most common applications are in power plant with regards to gearboxes of coal mill and the control system. If you are in a refinery, then you might be using synthetic oils with regards to compressors. So synthetic oils normally don't have much of specialty when it comes to filtration. They follow the same techniques and technologies for filtration as it is for the regular mineral oil. However, when it comes with the fire-resistant fluids, which are, or maybe water glycols, there might be things related to seal selection for the filtration system and material of construction for the filtration equipment. For example, one special synthetic fluid which I can remind of myself, that's phosphate ester-based fire-resistant fluid. It's certainly a synthetic fluid, very costly in nature. So that fluid requires stainless steel construction, and thereby the equipment which we use for filtration, that also needs to be stainless steel in nature. With regards to the hoses, seals and gaskets and all other parts, there are certain categories which we have to select from. Normally, we check the MSDS of these synthetic fluids before going ahead for manufacturing of any equipment with regards to filtration or processing of that fluid. So there are special attention and care which we need to take before going for manufacturing of synthetic fluid purification system. If you have any such questions with regards to a specific synthetic fluid, you could always mail us or chat with us over the social media.
All right. So the next one is from Broom Olori, and he wants to know what are additive properties how are additive properties replenished after oil filtration on TBN degraded filtered oil?
So I believe this question is with regards to an engine oil, because he has mentioned total base number. Please excuse me, Blume, if I'm wrong. But TBN is mostly checked in the case of engine oil. Now, your question is with regards to additive properties, means you want to know how do we replenish the additives in a condition where they have already got depleted. So with any filtration or purification, you certainly cannot bring back the lost additives. Additives have a sacrificial nature. And once they have got sacrificed, you cannot bring back those additives. However, why do these additives sacrifice? That's a very important criteria we need to understand. Additives sacrifice themselves in order to protect your lubricant from the foreign impurities. So if you have a filtration system in place right from the day when you pour in or have a new oil poured into your system, right from day zero, if you have a good filtration system, that filtration system would take care of any contamination or solid particles or foreign impurities. Thereby, there would be no need left for your additives to sacrifice themselves. So this is a kind of, you can say, understanding which your fluid is having. If your fluid is free from any foreign impurities, then you can be rest assured that the life of your additives could also be intact. The depletion of additives won't happen. And if the depletion doesn't happen, then there is a high possibility that the life of your lubricant would be extended.
All right, thank you for that. The next one is from Mr. Khalid Al-Jarani, and he has two questions. What does the viscosity numbers mean? Example, hydraulic oil 46 or 68 or 5W30. Second is, which one is more important to extend oil life expectancy? Remove contamination or increase the viscosity?
I will take this question. So viscosity is basically the resistance to flow in, you can say, layman terms. Viscosity certainly have much more important meaning and functions in your lubricants. Like, for example, why do we go for a higher viscosity when we go for gearbox lubrication? And why do we go for a lower viscosity like 32 in a hydraulic system? How is it possible for us to change from 32 grade viscosity to a 68 grade viscosity when it comes to hydraulic system? So all these things depend on the lubrication selection based on the application that you have. So viscosity is something which is related to the flow of the lubricant so that it can take the load of the entire lubrication system or the hydraulic system. Now coming to your second question, what is more important, contamination removal or viscosity increase? I should rather reframe your question, viscosity improvement, because increase of viscosity is not always what is required. Rather, what is required is coming or bringing back your viscosity to
your standard viscosity of your fluid. For example, you have procured a new fluid for your system and the design viscosity for your lubrication system is 68 CST. So you must ensure that you fall in a range of plus minus 10%. Means for 68 CST standard viscosity system, the maximum deviation can be from a 60 CST to around a 73 CST or a 74 CST, nothing beyond that. So if your oil or fluid has fallen below that or higher than that range, you need to bring it back to that range. How do you do that? One is by contamination removal, because with the effect of contamination, solid, liquid, gaseous, or sludge, that is semi-solid, viscosity certainly gets hampered. Now, the overall effect of all these contamination can either take your viscosity upwards or it can take it south, that is downwards. So you need to check your viscosity on a timely fashion. For this, there is a very interesting device called a whiz gauge. The whiz gauge is something which is a handheld device which you can use even at the site. My colleague Pulkita would give you some details on that. So you can use such a device at your site and you can regularly monitor your viscosity whenever you are checking your oil levels in the tanks, or whenever you are topping up your oils, you can check the viscosity even at the site. It's a matter of just 1 minute, and it's as easy as a calculator to use in function.
So Anjuman, thank you. Well, this gauge is something that we often recommend to everyone who is at site and have a sufficient quantity of lubricant, because that is the first symptom that you can observe about your lubricant that comes out of your machine. And any deviation in that particular property of oil can tell you a million things. So as a first check, or you can say as a field level check, we really recommend that people should have this gauge, especially the engineers who are at site. So that is a definitely recommended hand tool.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Thomas Ward wants to know, when we have dissolved non-condensable gases in our turbine lubrication system, that is oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, etc., does that put the lubricant at risk? Requesting Mr. Yogesh to take it up.
Yeah, nice question again. Whenever gas is dissolved in the oil, we have already discussed that first of all, it will cause foaming, and the worst effect of air or gas interrupted in the oil when it is hydrogen especially, there is chances of damage of Babbitt surface by hydrogen embrittlement effect. So it peels off the Babbitt layer in a fragmented way. So afterwards, there will not be any oil film formation on the bearing. And for removal part, the LVDS system lowers the vapor pressure of the oil, so it allows the gases and water vapor to come out from the oil. So if we find air is already mixed with the oil or ingressed in the oil, then it is recommended to use a LVDS system to remove the gases.
All right, thank you so much. So we have a very attentive listener, Mr. Kumar Iyer, and he says, Mr. Yogesh said overfiltration is harmful. However, Mr. Anshuman stated that additives are not getting depleted due to filtration. So how overfiltration is harmful? The normal industry perception is that more the filtration, the better the machine. Yeah, Mr. Yogesh,
Yes.
please throw some light.
Yes. I mentioned one thing, that due to lack of awareness, we do overfiltration. Overfiltration doesn't mean that you don't purify the oil. Suppose oil has reached a certain value, and still we are going for filtration of the oil with a choked or a clogged filter. What happens? Suppose we are using 1 micron filter element. This element is choked, the pores will get further tiny, and it can remove even 0.25 micron particles or less than that. So whenever we are going for filtration, we should know every do and don't, then we can avoid the case of overfiltration.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Ms. Chatterjee has a question. In between two tests, that is ruler test and RP vote, which one gives us more reliable or trendable reading for a turbine oil or hydraulic oil? Which one should be used for remaining life assessment of oil?
Now, the ruler test, I believe, is very common for testing the turbine oil, and same goes with the RPVOT as well. Now, there are always pros and cons for both these tests, which would be a very long discussion to do. However, with regards to the remaining oil life, I believe RPVOT is a very commonly used test. Ruler test, a lot of people do with regards to testing the varnish and degradation related activity happening in your fluid. So you can continue to use both of them, but you have to make a choice between them. Maybe you can take some economical choices. That would be better for you.
All right. So this question is being asked by a lot of people, so let us take it up. This is a particularly question by Sushovan. In ISO 4406 particle count test, what sizes and numbers are acceptable in hydraulic and thermic fluid? And a very generic question has been from a lot of people about what is the acceptable limit for moisture content in oil?
Okay. So with regards to ISO 4406 test standard, as we have been reiterating multiple times that for any system, it is the OEM who recommends what is the standard which you need to follow. The problem which we face at site is most of our manuals are not with us. Then we have to take a call on what should be the ideal value or reference value of ISO 4406. Now, if you ask me with regards to a hydraulic system, there are 2 to 3 different types of hydraulic systems which we normally have in the industry. One can be a very critical hydraulic system where you have servo valves, multiple proportionate valves, and the system is highly critical with regards to your operation of the plant. For such systems, going ahead with anything between NAS 3 to NAS 5, or in terms of ISO 1210 to ISO 1512, that should be an ideal range you should follow for your hydraulic system. With regards to thermic filtration, thermic oil, I'm not very sure if we need to follow ISO 4406 because thermic fluids do not have the similar function like a hydraulic system. For thermic fluids, what's more important is mechanical impurity. So NAS or ISO 4406 would be much critical or stringent standard for thermic fluid. You can just go ahead for mechanical impurity that is measured in weight by weight categorization using a simple filtration device or patch testing kit. So you can follow that.
Okay, thank you. We have Mr. Praveen who is a little pissed because you're not taking his question. So let's take it up. It's for engine oil. We are using CAT DEO 15W40 engine oil for mileage service intervals are 500 and 1000 hours. But reaching 500 hours top-up is needed and without any internal or external leakage. What is the cause for the top-up? The present hours is 7455. Yeah, Yogeshu, would you like to throw some light on this?
Yeah, sure. From the beginning of this webinar, we are talking about oil reconditioning and reclamation. There is one sentence I would like to add, that if oil is not burned, we can reclaim it. In the case of engine oil, oil really burns due to very high temperature. And in form of fumes, the engine oil comes in the combustion chamber and finally comes out through silencer or whatever the exhaust is. So that lost quantity we need to replenish after certain hours of operation. So like 500 hour or 1000 hour, we have to top up some quantity of oil. This is not very abnormal till the time your emissions are in control. If they are not in control, then your engine oil is mixing with the fuel oil, and we need to check the piston ring and liner condition.
Okay, thank you. I hope it satisfies Mr. Praveen and you're happy now, sir. We have an anonymous person asking for journal bearing lubrication. If my lube oil properties are within acceptance criteria for running hours more than OEM recommended running hours, for changing lube oil, is it still required or it is to be replaced as per OEM recommendation and why? I hope this question is clear.
Yes. See, whatever running hours is recommended by the OEM is on the very safer side. Based on the site condition, no OEM takes risk. But if we want to run it for the longer time, we have to take certain precautions. For an example, one OEM recommended you to run it for the 5,000 running hours. When machine was running on 4,999th hour, it was running with the worst quality of oil. So it was eating the machine life. Yes, if you want to run it more than 5,000 hours, please go for filtration at 75% of the running hour. Suppose running hour for the change is 100 hour, filter the oil at 75 hour and run it for 75 hour again.
All right. The next one is from Prem Singh Bisht. We are using FRF oil for control fluid system. Here we faced a problem regarding poor air release quality of oil. Due to that issue, foaming in oil and false cavitation in pump was observed. Can you tell what are the reasons of air release properties deterioration? How can we restore the oil property?
So air release property is a secondary parameter for the longevity of an EH oil or phosphate ester. The main deterrent factor out here with regards to your oil property is solid contamination and moisture contamination. And these lead to changes in the TAN or total acid number as well. Ultimately, the property of air release is dependent on these two properties. So if you can maintain a better ISO or MAC class for your oil, as well as if you can maintain a better ppm condition for your fluid, of course, you would have a better air release value as well. If Mr. Yogesh has to add something from the field, please go ahead with regards to his question on EH oil air release problems.
Yeah. Normally we say that if foaming is release property, but a high acid value dominates over the air release property. So go for the TAN checking, and if a high TAN value persists for the longer time, then there will be a permanent damage to air release property of FRF.
All right, thank you, sir. We have one more question, which is how to cost justify oil reconditioning program and what all are included in this. And we would want Pulkita to answer this.
Thank you, Bhavti. That's a beautiful question, actually, because what we have observed industry-wide is that once somebody looks for lubrication-related services, they only look at the cost of the new lubricant oil that they're going to purchase. But I would really recommend people to look at following things. One, of course, the cost of the new lubricant oil. The second is the critical spare parts that you have to compulsory keep in the inventory just because your machine keeps breaking down again and again because of lubrication problems. The third is the downtime that the plant faces and you're not able to produce, or your machine is not able to provide output during that time. As the machine is down, there would be certain manpower which will remain idle because of the breakdown of the machine. So those cost of manpower has also to be considered. The fourth is the more lube oil we consume or contaminate, the more is the disposal cost as well. So I would recommend everyone who thinks that disposing oil on a regular basis is a better idea rather than filtering it, to consider these costs that sometimes we miss. So if we look at the cost analysis part of it, I think filtration of oil is a much better option and gives more reliability of machines rather than simply changing the lubricant oil at very frequent intervals.
Thank you so much, Pulkita. I hope that has helped the person understand. Okay, so we go to the next one, which is from Mr. Yadav. How can we ensure that the efficiency of our equipment is not compromised by the number of times the same lube oil is used again and again after processing? Yeah, Anshuman, would you want to answer that?
I could not understand the question. Can you please repeat it?
Sorry. How can we ensure that the efficiency of our equipment is not compromised by number of times the same lube oil is used again and again after processing? I think he means after filtration.
Yes, so here we would like to clarify one point. It's not something where we are removing the lubricant from your tank and then recommending it to be purified and then reused back in some of the systems. Such kind of an activity is called recycling. So recycling can be damaging because when you do recycling, you are allowing your lubricant to lose all its additives and then lose its life and then do the recycling of it. So such kind of activity has no guarantee that the lube will have the same kind of property. What we are recommending here through this forum is reclamation or in-service purification. So in-service purification means you need to adopt purification techniques or reclamation techniques while your system is in service, while your system oil or lubricant is still there inside the tank. So it's certainly not widely recommended to evacuate your entire lubricant, take it out, reprocess it, and then reuse it. That's something which can be very risky unless and until it is performed under special operational conditions and special techniques. So while you are doing a reclamation of in-service lubricants, and while you're doing it right while it is in operation, you're certainly not damaging the fluid. Rather, you are enhancing the life of the fluid. So thereby the efficiency of your equipment or the lubrication system, that would rather improve much higher if you are performing the in-service reclamation as many times as you can. So ideally, the in-service reclamation must happen 24/7. That's the ideal recommendation. Because while your equipment is running, every second your equipment runs, there is a rotation or translation which is happening. And wherever there are mating surfaces inside your lubrication system, you would certainly have some wear and tear. In order to avoid that, it's important that you do reclamation or purification 24/7. Because the wear generation is happening like that. It's not happening intermittently. It's happening regularly, right away whenever you run your equipment.
Also, Anshuman, I would like to add here that one thing which is complementary to what Anshuman is saying is that we should always look for the root causes of why the contamination is getting added into the system in first place. So you might be recycling, you might be purifying your oil again and again, but you're not arresting the problem which lies at the root cause. So for example, in your tank, if there is varnish which is already sitting, even if you keep on purifying that oil and the varnish keeps sitting over there, it is just going to address your problem on a temporary basis and will not be a permanent fix. What is a permanent fix in that case is to flush the entire machine first and then arrest that particular root cause. So that is an example. So we should always look for the root cause, that why contaminant is getting added in the first place.
So he is asking, I believe for effective lubrication, correct lube oil is important. Please, which type of lube can you advise or suggest for turbine, boiler, feed water pumps, inboard and outboard bearings and governor system? Second, when you were talking about moisture removal, what about oil purifier? And third, please redefine the term flushing and explain. So I think he's the one who is not joined on time. So yeah, Anshuman, you would like to take that up?
With regards to the lubrication, maybe Mr. Yogesh can suggest what kind of lubrication is required for turbine and boiler feed pump. With regards to moisture removal, there are certain techniques which we have discussed in previous webinars as well with regards to oil purifiers. So there are 2 to 3 techniques which can be offered. One is the coalescer technique, which can remove free water from your fluids. Coalescers are very efficient in removing free water from the lubrication system oil. The second one is vacuum dehydration. which is another very important and efficient system. With vacuum dehydration, you can remove your dissolved content of moisture as well as free form of moisture. With regards to flushing, flushing is a very important thing and important phenomenon, which we had discussed in a webinar earlier. We can share with you personally the link of that webinar and certain FAQs of that. I believe you are from one of the refineries in Nigeria, as you mentioned. So in a refinery, it's a very important phenomenon. And I believe you have one of the largest refineries of the world. So you would have multiple rotary equipment in your plants. And thereby flushing, with that we mean any contamination in the internal surfaces of your equipment, like the pipelines or your cavities or your equipment components. You can actually remove the contamination which are sticking on the internal walls of these components or machine surfaces. If you are having a new project which you are setting up right now, without flushing, you can't actually commission your system. So thereby flushing becomes a very important criteria for or a milestone for commissioning your plant. I hope now you are satisfied with the question which you have posted outside.
Yeah, and regarding oil selection for the boiler feed pump and turbine, for the older generation machine, lubricating oil of viscosity grade 32 was recommended, but with technical advancements and when our operating parameters are on the higher side, oil of viscosity grade 46 is more suitable for turbine and boiler feed pumps.
All right, thank you so much. I hope Mr. Clement is happy now. Let's take the last question of the evening. We have an anonymous person asking, our mobile crusher experiences frequent power trip due to high hydraulic temperature, oil temperature. Our oil supplier recommends to upgrade the existing mineral hydraulic oil to a high viscosity index hydraulic oil. Will this help to lower the hydraulic oil temperature? Any one of you, whoever wants to answer this?
I think there would be some effect of oil viscosity on increased temperature of crusher. Crusher, I believe, is used in this mining application for them.
Yes, mining or coal handling plants as well. In increasing the viscosity grade can help to reduce your bearing failure issue, or it will reduce the friction, but about the temperature rise, it is not going to help you much. To reduce the temperature, you have to put extra oil coolers or some arrangement for that.
And I believe his question was for a higher viscosity index, as I read through. So probably the OEM has recommended to go for a synthetic fluid, which has a higher viscosity index for his hydraulic fluid. And that's why he has mentioned to upgrade the existing mineral hydraulic oil to a higher viscosity index hydraulic oil. So with this, you would have a stabler viscosity of your fluid while it is in operation. As it's a mining operation, I believe it would be in ambient conditions, which would be facing extreme conditions of ambient temperatures. Because of these ambient conditions going up in case of temperatures, there would be a change in viscosity of your fluid happening, which might lead to a poor lubrication of your mobile crusher. And that's why they have recommended you for going for a synthetic fluid, which will have a better viscosity index. However, at the same time, I would like to give you a word of caution out here. Synthetic fluids come at a very high price as compared to mineral fluids, and thereby your conditioning system for the synthetic fluid needs to be proper. If you jump from a mineral oil to a synthetic fluid and the cost goes up, your operational cost will go up, because ultimately you have to do the replacement of a synthetic fluid if it is not conditioned properly. So a strict recommendation would be to have better filtration systems, to have better condition monitoring systems and analysis devices at your place or plant, and have some better filtration systems. That is very much required for synthetic fluids once you jump into that field. So you can say you are jumping into a next league of lubrication. From a normal league of lubrication, you are going to jump into a next league of lubrication, So there are certain rules which you might have to follow.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for making this as an interactive session. We have some around 100 unique questions which we couldn't answer due to the time constraint. But do not worry, we will get back to each one of you with an FAQ that we will be publishing very soon. We will answer all your questions, all your queries, and it would be shared on your registered email ID, as well as on our social media platforms like YouTube channel and LinkedIn for that matter. Make sure that you follow us on each and every platform. So you don't miss out on any updates. Subscribe to our website, which is minimaxsystems.com. You would receive all the updates, newsletters, technical papers, white papers, case studies, case shots, and lots of other material if you subscribe to our page. So you won't be able to miss out on any update that we have for you. And also we would get in touch with people who have given us a detailed inquiry, who have given us a detailed situation, what they are going through right now in their plant. And we would reach out to you individually with our technical experts, and they will help you out with a proper customized solution. So thank you so much once again, all the panelists. I hope the expertise and the experience from Anshuman, Yogesh, and Pulkita have helped you and solved your queries. And please stay updated for our next webinar, which is webinar 6, which will be in 2 weeks from now. That is 8th of July on Thursday, same time. We will be talking about oil analysis to achieve zero mechanical breakdowns. Zero mechanical breakdown is our ultimate vision. And in order to achieve that, oil analysis is one of the very important steps to cover and to talk about. What mistakes do we usually make, why we don't consider it so important, and lots of other case studies and live experiences would be shared on this platform by Mr. Anshuman and another colleague from Technical Service Department. So stay tuned for all the information and subscribe to our channel, follow us on LinkedIn, and we will help you out in this journey towards lubrication reliability. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great evening ahead.